Hello again, everyone. It's Lee Cassidy, and we've got our next keynote session. This time we've got Erikjan Franssen from Diamanti talking about some of the power and challenges that comes with cloud native. So let's get Erikjan in with us. How are you doing, Erikjan? Some of the power. I think you had us on the view at the same time there, so if you just make sure that's muted, else we end up with two people talking.
It's already fixed. It's already fixed now, so that's fine.
Right, so I'll just bring up your slideshow. So there you go, and I shall leave you to it.
And let me play from the start. So hi, thanks, Lee. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to speak in your keynote in this session here today. So short introduction on my end. My name is Erikjan Franssen. You might have seen me already in some of the LinkedIn or the earlier recorded sessions. I work at Diamanti. I lead Diamanti's EMEA operation. Have been with Diamanti in the past 18 months. And I think as a company and as a business, we have a kind of a unique vision on cloud native. Look at the history of our company. We come out of the market of hyperconverged infrastructure, and where it was very early on detected that the new way of delivering applications wouldn't be necessarily monoliths inside of a virtual machine, but it would be delivered through cloud native technologies. Some of the founders came from CoreOS, which later on has developed to become the foundational principles of Kubernetes. So I think as a company and as a business and as what I've been confronted with, my customers and prospects, I think there's a very good vision we have on some of the challenges and opportunities. And what I've decided to do today with the audience is dissect a few of those challenges. And I'll run that by you. I'm a big fan of reading the register, and I think it's a bit of a tabloid for IT, but some of the contents inside of the register is really, really good. And some of the discussions and debates are really, really good. And there were some provoking statements from other readers, maybe on this call or on this meeting. They might have seen it. There were some provoking statements in terms of the future of Kubernetes and where it goes to. So I'll dissect those. I'll run them by you, and then we'll take them individually. And at the end, I'll explain a little bit about what Diamanti does. But I want to take as much time on what I see as a vision in terms of challenges and opportunities. I'm always a big fan that before we can talk about challenges and opportunities, we should talk about why are we moving in this direction, right? Is there, because if we can't get a solid reason to move in the direction of Kubernetes or cloud native, then why should we even talk about it? Why should it be challenges and opportunities? And I think the next will describe the best what I would say the reasons why we're here talking about this technology, right? I mean, in my vision, I've shared this before in an earlier session, I think back in April, in the same audience with Tectal and Diamanti. I've shared that the power of containerization is that it fundamentally changes the way application developers can create and deploy applications, right? So it is a very applications-driven, application delivery need-driven piece of technology that was introduced to simplify and enable our application developments, which is effectively right now almost our entire business in certain industries, to develop faster, respond to the market faster, and also update as you go along and learn from it. And what is important to understand is that it enables a culture of quick time to market and continually seeing challenging the status quo and failing fast. I think the latter is a very important thing. In the enterprise space, failing fast is usually not such a popular term, but what it effectively does, and we've all been confronted with that, right? Initial releases of an Uber app years ago, or initial releases, it goes into this continuous development life cycle where minimal viable products get released, and then they get updated as you go along, and as you move along with the app, it gets better and better based on user experience, based on user feedback, and based on development initiatives. And I think cloud containers, Kubernetes and cloud native in that respect facilitate that behavior. And as we see right now with very strong market disruptions and disruptors in almost every industry, whether you're in the medical industry, chemical industry, pharmaceutical industry, finance, banking, telco, there is disruptors around the corner, and their critical piece of success is their ability to adapt their IT infrastructure landscape or their IT application landscape towards current consumer or business-to-business needs. And I think as a foundational principle, we should be talking about that all the time. And then it's a role of what I would say from an application and operation perspective to facilitate this. This platform, this future platform, is here to stay. I don't believe there's a reason to deny its existence. I don't believe it's a fad, right? Like years ago, people called cloud a fad. That's not what it is. It is something that's here to stay because it fundamentally changes the culture. And once businesses are disrupting in their market, they can't go back. Which leads me to the next thing, is actually setting the foundation for this discussion, like who is fundamentally responsible. And I took back a Gartner research that was done by, was earlier this year, who is responsible for facilitating this? And Gartner seems to agree with me that it's infrastructure and operations that is actually responsible for delivering a platform in this. And this is a bit counterintuitive from what I would say happened in the past, because it was originally driven by the applications of delivery team, DevOps functions that would move out of enterprise IT, would start their own shadow IT, either in a cloud or somewhere else, and delivery teams that would just venture out and create their own technology pieces and would create their own separate islands where they could manage their cloud native and container environment. But if we want the enterprise to transform, it is infrastructure and operations that leads the responsibility to facilitate this as a platform, which leads me to what I would say first statement, right? Cloud native application development is an infrastructure challenge, and I can't emphasize that more. I think tons of organizations are failing to realize it. The responsibility for proper application development in cloud native fashion is an infrastructure challenge, and that could be infrastructure all the way up to platform level. So anybody that's responsible for facilitating proper platforms, whether that's cloud platforms, on-premise platforms, or a combination hybrid platforms, it is those people that are responsible for having the right facilities for application development to continue to do their work. So I think that's a very important statement to make. I think the majority of the audience that we have today are coming in from what I would say an infrastructure perspective. So we're talking to the right audience here, but I don't want to miss out on this statement. All right. As I explained to you before, I've collected a few challenges from the Register website that talk about Kubernetes and cloud native, and some of the challenges they found. Some of the researchers they've done some polls online where people could click on their favorite subject. What I've done, I've dissected these statements, and then I'll go into individually how to address some of these challenges around there. And I think some of them are really good, right? So the first one I really liked is Kubernetes, a black hole of unpredictable spend, according to a new report, right? And this was a report that was delivered by the Cloud Native Foundation, which is interesting because they are basically the guardians of the whole cloud native development. And they're already saying a research is like Kubernetes provides a black hole of unpredictable spend. Another one I really liked is, will containers kill VMs? And there's no winners in this debate. And I will go into what my feeling is of the position of VMs versus containers. And then thirdly, containers have security problems and flexibility issues. VMs will make them viable. And then it says, never bet against a technology that has matured over decades, right? And that goes into are VMs from a security perspective the better way to go. And then another interesting thing is because we were talking about earlier in the session, I think Lee, you were on that session, it was about enterprise databases deployed in Kubernetes, right? Proceed with caution. And now we've already talked earlier in an earlier session how to deploy a SQL database into a cloud native fashion. And I'll figure out, this comes from an IDC guru, as you can read here. But what I'll dissect is what my vision is on those subjects. All right. My favorite subject, Kubernetes as a whole of unpredictable spend. There's two subtitles that I would like to add. Controlling cost in the new world is not a Kubernetes problem, and cloud should not be seen as a business goal, because I think those are subtitles that are aligned into what the research was showing in terms of Kubernetes as a whole of unpredictable spend. Because the problem is the alignment of technology objectives and business goals are usually complicated when you're adopting new technologies. And let me explain that and dissect that a little bit further. If new technologies get adopted, especially in the high-paced environment that we are in right now, especially coming in from the application side, the problem is that usually it gets very technology driven, and which is good, by the way, because it drives technological innovation. But that technological innovation will probably disrupt a business, but will not necessarily initially align with fundamental business goals into profitability, operability, security, and some of those more, what I would say, enterprise needs. So what you got to figure out, and what the balance that's got to be figured out, is what are these technical objectives, and how technical can discussions go, and how much do we allow for freedom in the technical side to make sure we drive disruption, but how do we ensure that that aligns to business goals in terms of security, compliance, profitability, market models. And that's usually a complicated thing. That is not unique to Kubernetes. Kubernetes extrapolates it a little bit because Kubernetes is such a highly technical element. And if we thought that our board of directors doesn't understand IT all the time, they probably don't understand Kubernetes at all. My favorite statement is that fundamentally Kubernetes is understood by maybe 20 to 30 people in the world. And the rest of the world, like myself, we try to fake that we have a full understanding of what Kubernetes actually is. But that's not true. The power of Kubernetes is absolutely there, but to fundamentally understand what it does and how it operates is complicated. So that sometimes the technological side of your business can run away with the technical side of it with losing sight of the business outcome. And that's what can lead to extra cost, right? It can be done with extra releases. You can be talking about extra infrastructure or over deployed infrastructure, under deployed infrastructure, cloud infrastructure that's required. There's so many elements, additional technology needs, so all kinds of tool combinations, talent that needs to be acquired. So by that time, if you add in all those elements coming down from the business goals, the process, and the technology, it can be a whole of unpredictable spend, but you gotta take care of that. As I explained in my first statement, is an infrastructure problem, and what I see in the market is that decisions on infrastructure are usually not critically reviewed. When we were fully on premise, we had what I would say a life cycle management infrastructure process, and we would just replace infrastructure as we went along. As the public cloud came along, we had departments individually, developers, infrastructure managers that would use their own credit card and effectively start deploying applications in public cloud, right? And now we have all these public cloud contracts that end up on our balance sheets as OpEx, right? And then we have all these credits that the cloud providers are giving us in order to get cheap infrastructure, but then credits run out, or we need to stick to a certain model they have defined. So keeping track on spend in cloud, and that's not, again, a unique Kubernetes problem, that's more a generic problem. And then we have the double deployment, right? We have the cloud, but we also have on-premise. So I think there's a few things that need to be taken into consideration if you want to avoid getting that. And then the one key element is that the performance requirements of an application in dev test versus production is often overlooked. So let me explain it a little bit more, because there's two sides of the medallion. Sometimes dev test applications that are maybe tested on site or tested in the cloud have very low data load and then become very popular in its use. And then your cloud bill might run out of whack, or it gets approached from different network zones. So your cloud bill is massive after you've deployed that application in the cloud. Or you've overqualified the application and you're over deploying on pieces of infrastructure. So you're basically having way too much infrastructure added. You're not looking at the type of infrastructure you've thrown at it. You're not looking at the performance that you can get from the existing infrastructure. So that particular thing is usually overlooked. I know that tons of people, and especially probably here in this session, have expertise in this, but on an enterprise level, it's often overlooked. On-premise infrastructure is often seen as an inexpensive, inflexible option. And whereas as I partially agree to that statement, I do believe there is a solid place for on-premise infrastructure, not only from a compliance or a governance perspective in terms of data and data privacy or security perspective. I believe there's a place for applications in an on-premise or a private cloud, as Lee alluded to in his opening statement. And I think there's a place for on-premise infrastructure to be running on, and it's not necessarily an expensive and flexible option. You just have to take the right decisions in terms of where you run it, how you run it, and who runs it for you, whether you do it yourself or whether other people do it for you. And then there's another interesting thing is that there's an unnecessary lock-in to what I would call outdated processes, not technology. And this is an interesting statement because tons of times technology gets blamed for being a lock-in. We're going to a single vendor, we're doing this with a single vendor, we're doing that with a single vendor, and it's because of the technology locks us in. It's usually due to an outdated process, right? I just said cloud is not a business goal. Tons of companies have cloud as a business goal, and they sign up with a single cloud provider for their entire enterprise IT. The reason for that is that they can get large enterprise-style contracts. And it is my vision that even though the delivery method and the ability to deliver and all the methodology around it has fundamentally changed, those contracts are not so much different than the outsourcing contracts that we used to sign in the past. So I think that's my view on the unpredictable spend. I think very easy to overcome. Will containers kill VMs? And then my sub question under that is, did we completely kill the mainframe? And the answer is obviously no. Tons of financial institutions run the mainframe. Are we developing new applications on top of the mainframe? And I know I'm taking a shortcut here by comparing VMs with mainframe. But I'm thinking it's fundamentally the same. There will be always a place, and there's still applications that require VMs. And virtualization serves its purpose. It served its purpose. It just doesn't support that in my first slide I alluded to, that agile approach that some applications need, but other applications don't need that agile platform. I always talk about ERP systems or a general ledger. Whereas there's elements in your ERP or there's elements in your basic ledger of your organization that probably doesn't need an agile platform, and VMs have a perfect place for it. You don't need to update your general ledger every month. I bet that bunch of you would be having sleepless nights if we would be doing that, right? But then what I see in the market is then it leads to, okay, we have these VMs, we know that infrastructure, and then half-baked decisions are being made, like containers in VMs. In my view, they are a result of legacy-driven decision-making. I think we're past that world. We've established the need for cloud native, and we shouldn't try to host cloud native in a virtualized world. Because no matter how you twist and turn it, VMs create overhead. They need hypervisors, controllers, monitors, everything around it. All the works that Kubernetes in itself already carries may be supported by one or two tools. So I think that is a clear statement. Will it kill VMs? Probably not. Will it replace VMs in a lot of ways? Absolutely yes. Enterprise databases in Kubernetes. And then I would say my sub-statement there, it's not only about app mobility, it's also about data mobility, right? And as the enterprise redefines these agile approaches to the market, so does the application landscape, right? And the application landscape, databases are a critical component. is there any application right now, or any application that you know of right now, that doesn't rely on data? We are migrating into a data-driven world, and a data-driven world that it goes immer faster, and we're becoming more agile in a data-driven world. So why would we forget about the sources of data? So I think, like the VM discussion, I think enterprise databases in Kubernetes is a necessary need. It will go on, and then I know tons of disrupting startups in their field in every industry have no problem deploying their databases in cloud native fashion. And I don't think you should either. There's a couple of things that you need to take in consideration. I think it came through in the session on the deploying the SQL database in containers, and I think Boris will also explain that a little bit. And then there is obviously a few things that were well taken care of, right? Storage persistency, storage lanes, synchronization, replication are a few of those elements that you need to take, benefits that you can get, but also things that you need to take well taken care of before you can do that. Containers have a security issue. Well, and then my sub-statement is, well, running our enterprise IT like Fort Knox is the only solution, right? We should just disconnect from the internet and have no access points. But that's not a new thing, right? And then I'm a firm believer that new technologies inherently present challenges on every level, including security. And there's few things that we find out as we go along. However, even though it's not maybe broadly adopted in the enterprise, Kubernetes is not new. It's been around for a few years. And tons of solutions and capabilities are available to solve security issues. And then my view is, and then Diamanti's view is, that you should tackle it from the ground up. So if you can cover it in the infrastructure side, then that's the place to do your first line of defense. And from there, you work all the way up to the end user that uses the application. So I think also security solutions can be found in the market to resolve these. So our view is that it's not about breaking down silos. It's about breaking down those silos and not creating them, right? If you go and deploy containerized application, and if this is an infrastructure problem, then from an infrastructure side, you need to be able to cover a wide variety of application. You need to be able to solve the solution for a wide variety of deployment options. You should try to overcome the complex distributed solution with requiring advanced Kubernetes skills. And you should take care that the fact that the enterprise, that platform becomes enterprise operationally ready, right? With orchestration, multi-tenancy, security, telemetry, all of those elements combined into that market. Because then, from an infrastructure perspective, you are providing that platform that can cover all the applications, that you can make the right decisions when it comes down to public cloud or non-public cloud, when it comes down to keeping spend under control, to simplify the distribution of the solution, to overcome the VMware issue, to make the wide variety of applications stateless and stateful, add in the enterprise databases, and then obviously also overcome that security issue. And that's exactly the field where Diamanti plays in, right? Enterprises must address these cloud scale and performance, the consistency problems, the security. This is actually a summary of the things that I just described. And we need that integration, the ability to hyperscale and work vendor agnostic. And I think there's a hybrid cloud session at the end, a panel discussion where I will share my views on that. Now, in order to achieve that, Diamanti has a certain vision. And as I said, we come up from the infrastructure side. And it's our capability that we want to provide, where we want to provide global visibility and control effectively. That's what I talked about, between your on-premise infrastructure and your applications and your data and the app that runs on top of it. That's what we do with our Spectra Global Management plane. We are able to manage and control infrastructure no matter where it sits, and spin up and move down applications as we go along. Then we have our Ultima data plane, where you're able to combine the data, have the storage persistency with our own Ultima CSI, our own Ultima CNI, where we make a container behave like a regular network citizen to keep the security people in check, to have built-in security from the ground up, our own storage interface with dedicated storage quality of service lanes, dedicated storage lanes and quality of service. And you have the ability effectively to manage that enterprise database or enterprise data issue, so you can move not only the application itself, but you can move your own your data as well at the blink of an instance. And you want to do that between those infrastructure choices that you have. And that could be AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, on-premise, or something in telco and edge. And then effectively, we have a hardware layer with offload cards where we are able to speed up applications and make on-premise infrastructure a lot cheaper because you're able to run a lot more workloads on it. That was a very short bit about Diamanti. I hope in this session I've shared my vision on some of the challenges in cloud native and how I think we should overcome them. I think Diamanti can play a very important role in that because of the unique platform and the unique combination of capabilities that we can provide to address these challenges. I think if there's any questions, they can be left in the networking zone or maybe left in the screen. But with that, I would like to end my session. And thanks very much for listening in.
Well, thanks ever so much for that, Erikjan. That was a great session again, and some great insights into those questions raised and comments from other organisations. It's quite a challenging thing. So, using a bit of stats as well, I think it might have been from your survey, but it looked like 80% of organisations were doing some form of testing using Kubernetes in the UK, but only 20% of them were using more than 5 nodes in a cluster. It was very small implementations, whereas it was only 20% were going bigger than that. And I think it comes down to some of those challenges. The skills and experience, moving to different types of infrastructure, the ability to monitor, having the people and processes in place within an organisation to be able to deliver as well. So I think it is quite difficult for a lot of organisations to move forward with this. Yeah,
definitely. And we're here to help them, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially when challenges like I presented get thrown at you. And those challenges are real. I'm not denying that they're real and they get recognized by the industry, but I think there's tons of solutions that we can find in order to help out with this.
Okay, so we're going to switch over in a few minutes to on the hour to 3 more sessions. We did have a slight technical issue with one of them. Boris had a slight issue earlier, but we seem to have resolved that, so we should be fine for his session next. So we've got 3 different ones. So let me just make sure I've got the right ones because I've got multiple banners available on my list. So we've got Ross Cooper-Smith, who's going to do a create a private cloud session from 3 to 3:30. In parallel to that, we've also Eric Cook looking at observability, but giving you more of a demonstration of what observability looks like and the things you can achieve using it. And then what we've got is Boris covering cloud native at scale across clouds and stateful. And coming back to our session earlier where we did SQL Server, there was quite a lot of interest about how you could actually run SQL Server in there. So that's stateful capabilities within Kubernetes and using persistent volumes and persistent volume claims is going to be very important for a lot of organizations. And one thing I mentioned in that session earlier, if you look at SQL Server itself, just in the UK, there's 14,000 organizations that utilize SQL Server. Not all of them are going to throw it away, start again with something that is more cloud native, cloud centric, as a lot of people will say. They want to utilize it. So the ability to take that SQL Server and move it into this new environment and also keep the skills, because all the skills that they've developed over the years in how to actually develop applications utilizing SQL Server at the back end is going to be a very important thing as well. Once we finish those sessions, we'll be going off for another networking session. So, it'll be click on the left-hand side and join the networking to meet up with your peers as well. Thanks ever so much again for joining us, Erikjan, and look forward to seeing you again for our panel discussion later on at, let's make sure what time our panel discussion is 4:15. So the panel discussion that Erikjan mentioned was at 4:15 to 4:45. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.